We are going to be making this game right here called Purr's Revenge. It is a adventure game where you collect milk on a farm. You are a cat and you are sneaking around this farm collecting milk and avoiding the big bad cow who is coming to steal the milk back from you. He can attack you and take his milk back to his barn. But if you happen to collect enough milk, you unlock the bridge to go to the next island, where more milk spawns and you can collect more milk to unlock the bridge to the next island. Can you collect all the milk before the cow steals it all back from you? Build this game and have some fun. This is going to be awesome. Let's dive into the code and see how you build a real adventure game with actual animations and different islands and unlockables. It's going to be awesome. To start building your cat adventure game, I would recommend remixing the project that we have on this page. That will give you all of the art assets and all of the costumes needed to get all of the animations working perfectly so that you don't have to try to find all of that stuff out on the internet or draw it yourself. But if you're an aspiring artist, go ahead and do that yourself. But for me, I'm going to remix the project, and let's see what we get with that remixed project. First, we have the player, which is this cute little kitten right here. And this is the star of the show. So not only is it this 3/4 format where the head is really big and it's not directly top down, it's like a 3/4 perspective. But if we go into the costumes here, we can see that we have 8 costumes. So we have 2 walking costumes for each direction that the cat is facing, so that we have the full suite of animations to get this cat looking awesome no matter which direction it is facing. We also have this awesome bottle of milk, which is really tiny on your screen, but we go into the costumes, we can see that it's an awesome bottle of milk. We have a bridge that is going to bridge the gap between the islands. We have this amazing cow with 2 walk frames so that it can walk across our screen, and this gigantic pixel art barn that we're going to have to size down because it is way too big, but that is okay. The coolest part about this, well, I guess the most important part about this, is that it has a consistent art style across every sprite. It is pixel art on every single sprite. And that is important because it's going to hold that cohesion in our game. It's going to make our game feel like one game, not a bunch of different pieces that were kind of glued together and kind of fit, but not really. It's going to feel like one game. All right, now that we've explored what we have in our game, let's start building our game and making it fun to play. All right, let's start developing our game. The first thing that I'm going to do is rename my game because Cat Adventure Blank Copy is a terrible name. I'm going to call it Purr's Revenge. I think that's going to be pretty funny here. Okay. Now, I'm going to start by animating the cat. Before I even get the cat to move, I'm going to make sure that it animates correctly with all of the button presses. So what I'm going to do is when the green flag is clicked, I'm going to broadcast a message. Just like we've done everywhere else, I'm going to broadcast a certain message, and that message is start game. Then once that message is received, then I'm going to actually start all of my stuff. And the green flag is going to act like the awake message, kind of setting all the variables and setting the positions and showing and hiding the cat and all of that. So this green flag, I'm going to show the cat because I want him to be shown. And then just for us right now, I'm going to make him go to the center of the screen. Which is going to be 0, 0, but that is going to change later on. But for right now, it's going to be 0, 0. It's going to show, and then it's going to broadcast start game. That looks great. Then once we start the game, we're going to animate the cat. Okay, we're going to be listening for button presses. I'm going to use W, A, S, and D for my movement. I know a lot of you are used to the arrow key movement, but real PC games use W, A, S, and D instead of the arrow keys. Why is that? Why not just use the arrow keys? Well, because the arrow keys are on the right-hand side of the keyboard, and that's right next to the mouse. And your right hand is holding the mouse, not the keyboard. So we're going to use W, A, S, and D for our movement. But if you're more comfortable with the arrow keys, you can switch it to the arrow keys. All right, we're listening for arrow keys or W, A, S, and D. We're listening for key presses. So we're going to use a forever loop. That's right, a forever loop, because we're forever checking if a key is pressed. And that's right, you heard the word if. If a key is pressed, we're sensing if a key is pressed. What key? Well, let's go ahead and animate the cat walking down the screen or towards us. So that is going to be the S key or the down arrow. So S key. And what we're going to do is we're going to switch to a certain costume. So if we look at the player's costumes, we can see that we have this front walk 1 and front walk 2. We're just going to switch between those two costumes over and over as long as we are holding down that down arrow or S key. So let's check that out. So we're going to go in here and we're going to switch to a certain costume. So switch to costume front walk 1. That is that first frame of the animation. And then we're going to switch to costume front walk 2. So if we try this out and we hold down the S key, we can see that nothing happens. Why doesn't anything happen? Well, it is switching between those two costumes, but it's switching so quickly that you can't actually see it happen. We need it to wait a very small amount of time between each switch. So we're going to go into that control and we're going to wait a small amount of time. Not a full second, but just 0.1 seconds. And then we're going to wait again at the end of the switch for just 0.1 seconds. Click the green flag, hold down the S key, and we can see our little cat right there, he's moving. He's walking down the screen. That looks so cool. Now, if you want this animation to be a little bit slower, you can change that wait. You can try 0.15 or 0.18, maybe even 0.2. But don't make it wait any longer than that. I would say any longer than that, and it's going to look really choppy. Now, what you want to do is go ahead and, I trust you, duplicate this block and put it underneath and do this for all of the directions. You're going to make it this so that when they hold down the A key, we do the left walk frame 1 and left walk frame 2 and all of the animations, and I will show you what that code's going to look like right now. Okay, so here is the entire block of code. We can see on the right hand side of my screen here, the cat animates all the way through every direction he can move. We can look at the code. The S moves him down, makes him face the front, so he's walking front. A makes him face the left. He walks left, left walk. W is backwards. It's up the screen, so he's doing the back walk 1 and 2. And D makes him move right, so that's the right walk 1 and 2. So I zoomed in there for you. I'll let you take a look at that. All right, now that that's in your game, let's actually move the cat in the next video. All right, we animated our cute little kitten. Now let's get him to move. Let's actually separate out the movement away from the animation. And it's going to follow the same sequence of steps, but it's going to be separate from the animation. Let me show you what I mean. I am going to duplicate this entire set of instructions, this entire coding block. I'm going to right click right here, duplicate, and move it right next to it. And then I'm going to empty out all of the if statements. So I'm going to grab all of the animations here, I'm going to throw them away. I'm going to empty out all of the if statements, all of these conditional blocks, I'm going to empty them out. I'm still forever listening to the key presses, but the key presses are empty. Still listening for the same ones, but they're empty. And then I'm going to put the movement in here. Now, the reason I am separating it out from the animations is because in my animations, I'm actually waiting some time. But if I wait during the movement, then the movement will happen in these little stutter steps, and that won't feel good. And I want the movement to be fluid. I want it to feel good. And I don't want those little waits, those little pauses in between each step. All right, let's go ahead and put that movement in here. We're doing some movement, so we're going to be playing in this blue motion. All right, so the S key, or the down arrow, that is going to move the character down. So we're going to have him point in a direction and then move a certain way. So what I'm going to do here is I am going to set the move direction, the rotate direction here for the this sprite. If I click on direction, I can actually set it to not rotate. That is the one on the far right hand side here. I don't want the actual sprite to rotate at all. I don't want that image to rotate because we're handling the rotation of the image in the animations here. I don't want the image itself to rotate. So I'm going to click on this no rotate. But I do want the game engine to rotate the sprite. So I'm going to point in direction. And we're pointing down. So I'm going to click on here. I'm going to drag this arrow down. And then I'm going to move a set of steps. And I am going to move 2 steps. And then I'm going to duplicate this set of code, and I'm going to click it into the A direction. Now this A direction is the left arrow. And so I'm going to have him move left. And then I'm going to duplicate that block and click it into the W direction, which is the up arrow. And I'm going to make sure this arrow points up. And then I'm going to duplicate that block. You guessed it. Click it down in the D direction. And that D direction is the right arrow. So I'm going to take this arrow and point it to the right. Now, if I play my game, not only does the cat face the correct direction, but he actually moves the correct direction as well. Nice! Everything is working exactly the way that I want it to. We can even move diagonally, and he kind of does this little shimmy walk. Now, is there different ways that you could have handled this movement? Absolutely, there are different ways that you could have set up this movement. You could have nested these if statements so that you can't move diagonally. You actually move in a stepwise function. You could have done it so that it follows the mouse pointer and you only ever move in one direction. You're constantly following the mouse. There's all sorts of different ways that you could have set this movement up. But for me, for this game, I chose to do it this way. Now, if we want our levels to look that good, we need to plan. And we're going to use just regular paper to do this. If you don't have paper available, you can go to sketch.io/sketchpad and do this electronically, but I would really encourage you to just get out a piece of paper and a pencil and draw out your levels that way, because you can do it really, really quickly, and you can get creative and make mistakes and fix them really quickly to concept out your art before you do anything hard in stone on your computer. Okay, so we want a centralized location, and then you can go up to a level or right to a level or left or down, and you have these branching paths that you can access. So let's draw that out. So we have a central location that is our home island. And that is one backdrop. And this square is that whole backdrop. And I'm going to name this one home. And I'm actually going to type this as the name of my backdrop when I design it in Scratch. And then I'm going to have another backdrop that comes off to the right hand side here. And then I might have one that comes off to the left hand side here. And then one that's up at the top. And then maybe that one down here to the bottom. And if I want to get crazy, maybe I have another one to the right hand side of that one. And so on and so forth. I can keep doing this as many times as I want. Now, I can't actually draw this in Scratch. In Scratch, I have an interface that looks like this, right? I have this big, long list of all of these costumes like this, where I have a backdrop here, and I have a backdrop here, and then I draw one and I just have names. Well, this one will have that home name, right? And I'll type that out. You'll see that when we actually go to draw these in Scratch. But I can cycle through them using some code. But I kind of have an idea in my brain how I'm going to get to each one. So this one is at the top of the home, so I'm going to name it top in Scratch. So in my drawing, I'm actually going to write those words on these islands so that when I go to name them in Scratch, I know exactly where they go, so that when I go to program them with the ladders or the bridges that go between them, I know exactly where I'm going. It helps me keep everything organized, which is really hard to do when you get lots and lots and lots of levels. Like this one is the right-hand island, right? And then this one is probably going to be called right, because it's the right-hand side of the right-hand level. And if I do a level here, well, I could call this one right top, because it's to the right-hand side of the top. It's also to the top-hand side of the right. So just come up with a scheme that you know that you can use to design and lay out your levels. This is important. This is going to be how you keep everything straight. And then when you actually go to draw them, make sure that you have paths that make sense. So for our home level here, we need the actual level itself, the actual land here, to make sense. So we have water all around. And then we have a path that comes up here to the top, right? And then we have like a path that goes to the left because we can get to the left-hand side, and a path that goes down here to the bottom. And then we have like the big chunk of land that we actually run around on, and maybe it gets a little bit smaller here, but we can go to the right, so we have a path that goes over to the right. And maybe that's what our level looks like. And we can maybe even make it a little bit bigger here and erase this here so that this fills in. But this over here, we don't have a level that is up here or over here, so we just have a path that stretches here, and then everything else kind of dead ends because there is no way to get up here or over here or down here. So we can design these out now on paper before we start drawing them in Scratch. Take some time, maybe take half a class to draw out and design your levels on paper and label them correctly so that when you start drawing them in order here in Scratch in your backdrops, they make sense. Okay, let's translate a little bit of this into Scratch, and then we'll start coding. Now that you have your levels designed, let's go ahead and translate this design document into Scratch. So we'll switch back over to Scratch, and we'll go into our stages, into the backdrops, and we'll start drawing our first backdrop. Now this first backdrop is going to be the home backdrop. So I'm going to rename this costume to be home, because this is the center costume. Then I'm going to switch from bitmap, which you can't see. Let me move my face here. I'm going to switch from bitmap to vector. Then I'm going to choose the paint bucket, and I'm actually going to fill it with a blue color. This is going to be my water color. Now that I have my water, I can start drawing the land. I'm going to switch back to bitmap. Okay, switch back into bitmap mode. Then I'm going to choose the square, and this is going to be the tool that I use to draw the land. So I'm going to go ahead and jump into my sketch here, so I kind of have some paths up here, path here, path here. So I have a path in each direction and then kind of a big square in the middle. All right, so I'm going to start with my big square in the middle. Obviously, it's not going to be blue because it's not water. I'm going to make mine brown. So brown is actually an orange color. So we're going to choose an orange color. We're going to drop the saturation down and then drop the darkness, so it's more of a brown color. And then go ahead and draw a big square in the middle. Oh, mine has a black outline. I don't want an outline. That's terrible. That doesn't look like dirt. So let's go ahead and remove that outline completely by choosing this white box with the red line in the middle. That actually is a transparency that removes the outline completely. All right, so now I have this brown square that is in the middle of my level here, and that is for dirt. Do I want dirt or do I want grass? What do I want my character to walk around on? Do I want this to be fields of green? I think I want it to be green. So I'm going to actually change this color to be more of a green color because I want the character to walk around on the grass. And then I want the farmland where the barn is going to sit to be a dark brown. And then I want the roads to be a light brown. So I have this square here that I can then move around. And let's go ahead and make some smaller squares that are going to be my paths. So if I go back to my sketch here, I can see I have a path up to the top, a path over to the right, and to the left and down. So let's go ahead and draw some squares. I'm going to draw one up to the top, one over to the left, one down to the bottom, and one over to the left. Oh, sorry, that's to the right. I know my rights and my lefts. I'm an adult. And then now that I have these land masses, I want to make sure that they don't actually connect. I don't want them to run off this edge of the screen like that because then the player can just walk to the next level without unlocking it. And unlocking things is going to be a key mechanic of my game. So I want these to actually not touch the edges. So I want to make sure that I pull them back so they don't actually touch the edges. Then I'm going to draw a brown square somewhere in my level that is going to represent the place that the barn is going to be. Now, if we remember from the prototype of my game, the barn is where the cow is going to steal the milk and go back to. So I'm going to actually have the barn right here in the corner. But these are things that you can change. Then I'm just going to put some lighter colored paths all over. No, I'm going to keep that dark. And then I'm going to draw some paths here that are a lighter color. So I'm going to actually change this color to be a bit lighter so they look like walking paths. And I'm just going to kind of decorate my level with these. Now I don't want this walking path to go on top, to go on top of that. I want it to go behind it. Or I can go and select it and make it just a little bit smaller so that it doesn't overlap. Yeah, actually, let's go with that. I think that looks a little bit better. And then I'm just going to draw them around my game. Just kind of design these levels out the way that I like them. Maybe having it walking a path that goes in each direction over onto the little areas where the bridges might be. Just kind of design out what you think your levels are going to look like. Now I have my home level. I have a home base. Now I have a lot of other levels to build, but I'm going to use a cheat code in programming. I'm just going to duplicate the home level. I'm going to right click on it and choose duplicate. And then I'm going to rename this from home to, because that's not useful, to top. Okay. Now I have the top level, but it doesn't look the same as my home level. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to use the selection tool to actually delete the squares that I don't need, because top doesn't connect anywhere. Like it will connect over here, which I didn't have, so I need to redesign that a little bit. But I don't need it to connect over here, so I'm going to delete that. And then this path, I'm actually going to shrink down because it doesn't connect there. It only connects left and right. And then I can just redesign this a little bit to fit what the top should look like. And now I have top and home done. And most importantly, the water is the same exact color as it was in my home level. And this is important because the cat cannot walk on water. This is super important that the cat should not be able to walk on water. And why do we want the color to be the same on every level? Because when we come back to our player here, we're actually going to code it so that the cat can't walk on water, and we're going to do that next. So go ahead and design out all of your levels. That's your next task. Go ahead and build all of your levels. Let's make it so that cat can't walk on water. If we play the game right now, we can take our cat and we can just walk onto water like it doesn't even exist, which means that this cat has absolutely no reason to collect any of the milk or play our game at all because it can just advance to the next level and go wherever it wants. Let's restrict that cat's movement to actual cat movement. Cats hate water, right? So let's go ahead and code up so that when the cat touches this blue color, it stops. It hits that imaginary wall, so to speak. So we're going to use that event of when I receive start game. We're going to constantly be checking if it's touching the water. If it's touching the water, we're going to make it stop. So if we're constantly checking something, what kind of loop are we going to use? That's right, a forever loop. We're forever checking to see if the cat has touched the water. And we're sensing something. Listen to the language I'm using. Forever. If the cat is touching the water, where the water is a certain color, right? And we made sure in our backdrops that every level is using the exact same color of the water. And that is important because we're going to sense the color of the water, not whether or not the computer understands that we meant that to be water. Because the computer is dumb. It doesn't know those things. It only knows that this exact color is what we're looking for. And when we touch the water, we're going to move in the negative 2 steps direction. Why is that? Well, when we move in a direction, we are advancing 2 steps. If we just move 0 steps, then in the next frame, we're going to move a positive 2. So if we go and we stop, and then we go to, and then we stop, and we go to, and we stop, and we go to, and we stop, that actually just makes it halt. It doesn't prevent it from moving. So if we go to and then back it up, and then go to and back it up, each frame is negating the frame before, which makes it hit that invisible wall. And that's what we want. So we're going to go to motion and we're going to say move a negative 2 steps. Basically, ignore the 2 steps that you were told to move before. So now when we come up to this water over here, we don't move through the water because this negative 2-step movement is telling the computer to ignore the positive 2-step movement that we told it to happen over here. If we just put a 0 over here, we're not actually telling it to ignore it, we're just telling it to stop the movement, not to ignore the movement. We want to ignore the movement. All right, now we have movement that can't go through the water. We can kind of sort of glitch through the movement, the water, if we do some crazy key presses. Scratch isn't perfect. There is another way to do this that actually nests if statements, but if you actually hit a corner, you teleport through the water. So you got to kind of pick your battles here. We're picking this battle for a movement, but there are other ways to do this, just letting you know. All right, let's move into spawning in our milk next. All right, let's make that milk spawn in, but only on the land. If the milk spawns and lands in the water, there is no way for us to ever collect it. So let's make sure the milk, which is this right here, only ever spawns on the land. And let's make it spawn on random locations all over the map. Let's get into that. Okay, so I'm in the milk. Let's go ahead and do a little bit of resetting right at the beginning. So we're going to set some green flag stuff. As soon as the game starts, we're going to do some resetting of some variables. So events, when the green flag is clicked, we're going to go ahead and set the size to be 70%. Okay, and we're gonna hide the milk because we don't want the milk to be seen. We're actually going to spawn them in, and we want the clones to be visible. So then, when we get the start game message, that's when we start creating some clones and all of that. So when I receive start game, then we're going to broadcast. Not start game, that makes no sense. We're going to broadcast a new message called spawn milk. which kind of just sounds gross. I don't know about you. All right. Then we're going to do some stuff when we receive spawn milk. We're going to repeat something 10 times. We're going to go ahead and when I receive spawn milk, we're going to repeat something a certain number of times. I'm going to go with 7. This number you can customize to your heart's content. How many milks do you want to collect when your game starts? When you go to a level, when you spawn milk, how many milks do you want to spawn? Don't do more than like 50. Otherwise, Scratch will kind of freeze and your game won't be playable. So, somewhere between 3 and like 30, somewhere around there. I'm going to go with 7 because that is good for me. And I'm going to create a clone of this milk. Create a clone of myself. This is what I want. So when I hit the green flag, nothing happens. We're creating a clone. Yes, we've created 7 clones of this milk. But it doesn't actually do anything because they're all invisible. So what should happen when I start as a clone? When I start as a clone, we want the milk to be seen, right? Well, first we want it to go to a random position and then we want it to show. So let's go to a random position. And then show. And let's just see what happens. Hit the green flag. Cool, that totally worked. It spawned milk in and it went to a random position. But they, I can't get to that milk. If I'm the cat and I want to go collect that milk, I can't. I can't get the milk. It won't let me go in the water. The kitty is too scared. So what should happen? Well, if it touches the water, it should just pick a new random position, right? How do we do that? Can we just say if touching this blue color, go to a random position? Can I just say that there? No, that didn't work. Wait, did it? No. That didn't work. Okay, why didn't that work? Oh, because it only does it once. As soon as it starts as a clone, I have to constantly be checking if it touched that random. I have to forever loop. I need a forever loop. Okay, forever. If it's touching that. Yes. Okay. It's a beautiful thing. Okay, awesome. So I have my milks only being spawned in on my landmass, inside of where the game is actually being played, not in the sea of the crazy chaos that the cat can't get to. Awesome. Now I want the milks to disappear, or at least the clones of the milks, to disappear when the cat touches them. How would I do this? I think you guys could probably figure out how to do that, right? Maybe I've done it before. So if I'm going to put it inside of my forever loop. Actually, let's build it outside and then see if you guys know where to go. So if it's touching something, if it's touching the player, what do I want to do? What do I want to do? I want to delete this clone, right? So if I come over here, yes, the milks disappear when I touch them. Awesome. That's exactly what I want. As soon as I pick up the milk, it's collected, it disappears. But I don't get credit for collecting the milk. I want credit. I want to keep track of how many milks I've collected. How do I keep track of things that I've collected? That's right, with the variable. I'm going to make a variable. I'm going to say this milks collected. Let's spell things correctly. Milks collected. It's going to be for all sprites, not just for the milk sprite, because I want this to be accessible by everybody. And then I'm going to come back in here and I'm going to change milks collected by 1 every time the player collects one. So I should see this go up every time I touch a milk. Yes, yes, I'm drinking all the milk. Cow, you can't get me. You can't do anything about this. I'm drinking all your milk. This is awesome. Now I just have to build the rest of the game so the cow fights back. Oh, this is so cool. this is awesome. This is starting to become a real game. But when I hit the green flag, I don't lose any of that milk. And if the milk spawn on top of the barn, they don't move. Well, we now have the ability to, if it touches something, it goes to a new random position. So if you don't want the milks to spawn on the road, you can change it. If you don't want the milks to spawn on the barn or on the cow, you can put that code in there. You can customize this any way you want. Also, as a quality of life thing here, we're going to also change milks collected or set milks collected in our player in the kind of reset function here. We're going to set milks collected back to 0 as soon as the green flag is clicked in our player. We're going to kind of reset all of our variables right here. We're going to keep track of all of them right here. So as soon as we play the game, everything gets set back to 0 and we start back fresh. Awesome, guys. We've got milk spawning in our game. They don't spawn in the water. We can collect them and our score changes. This is awesome. Let's continue to the next step. Okay, let's go ahead and set up our cow. This is going to be seen as our enemy. Our cow is going to chase our player, which is the cat. When it touches the cat, it's going to steal 1 milk from the cat and bring it back to the barn. First thing that we need to do is set up the animations for the cow so that it looks like the cow is walking. We're going to set that up separate from the movement, just like we did with the cat. So when I receive not spawn milk, but start game, we're going to go ahead and start playing that animation. So when I receive start game, let's go ahead and make sure the cow is visible. So we're going to choose that show block. And then we're going to forever switch between those costumes. Now, if we look at the cow's costumes, we can see that it just has 2 costumes. So instead of specifically saying which costume to switch to, we can just say go to the next costume. So in my looks, I can just say go to the next costume. Now, if I just run this right here like this, we can zoom into the cow and we can see it is running at Mach 467, which is way too fast. So let's go ahead and slow that down by putting a wait in there. We are going to wait a certain amount of time, and I found that 0.2 seconds happens to be perfect. So now when we look at our cow, it slowly walks, which is the perfect speed that we want it to walk at. I love that. All right, so this is the code right here to animate the cow. Now, where do we want the cow to start at right when we start the game? Well, we want it to go to the barn. So when I receive spawn milk, which is whenever we go to a new island or anything like that, we want the cow to go to where the barn is. That's going to be its starting location. And we're going to treat this spawn milk message as its kind of reset message. So when I receive spawn milk, we want it to go to the barn. So go to not a random position, but to that barn position. I'm just going to move this down here so it's a little easier to see, and we can see it goes to the barn. Now our barn is way too big and it's not where we want it. Let's just clean that up real quick. So I'm going to click on the barn here and I'm going to change its size from 100 to 20. I know that's hard to see, but I've changed the size from 100 to 20, and then I'm just going to move it into the center of this this brown farm patch right here. Now when I hit the green flag and we spawn our milk, the cow goes to the barn, which is right here. And the cow is actually hidden inside the barn, which is totally a choice that you can make. If you don't want to see the cow is actually hidden behind the barn. If you do want to see the cow, then just make sure the cow is going to the front layer. You can do that by going to looks and going down to the go to front layer, and you can just click on that and you can see the cow is now on top of the barn. I actually like this going to the back layer so that the cow actually makes it look like the cow is actually going into the barn when he reaches the barn. Okay, now we need the cow to go to the player, capture the milk, and then return back to the barn. So let's set that up. So when I receive the message, start game. I am going to, as the cow, I am going to forever repeat until I'm touching the player. What is the cow going to do until it touches the player? Well, it's going to point towards the player and move one step towards the player. And it's going to do that forever. So we can see that the cow slowly goes towards the player. And it does that until it reaches the player. Once it reaches the player, it still animates, but it no longer moves, which is exactly what we want it to do. Now, the special thing here is in the direction down here for that cow, I have it facing the left-right direction. It's not actually spinning upside down and walking on the ceiling when it's pointing towards the player. It's only pointing left and right, even though on the back end, it's pointing in any direction. The actual sprite is only flipping left and right, and I like that for the cow. Okay, now what happens once it touches the player? So this block will repeat until it touches the player. What happens once this block ends, meaning it touches the player? Well, we want it to point towards the barn and then go to the barn. So let's point towards the barn, and then let's actually have it glide to the barn over 2 seconds. Let's try that. So we hit the green flag, it goes to the barn, comes to the cat, touches the cat, steals its milk, and goes back to the barn. Then it comes back to the cat. We can make the cat go anywhere we want. The cow will chase the cat. Once it touches the cat, it will then go back to the barn with its milk. Awesome. So the cow is doing what we want it to do, at least mechanically. Now we want to actually add in the part of the game where it's stealing that milk. Well, we have this variable that tracks how much milk the cat has. We can manipulate that variable based on whether or not the cow is touching the cat. So let's go to our variables here, and we can actually change the milks collected by -1. Once the cow has finished touching the player. So we're not going to put it inside of this block here. Once it's touched the player, then we change milks collected by -1 because we're taking 1 away. So let's try that out. So let's make this big. Hit the green flag. I'm the cat. I'm going to go collect some milk. Okay, so I have 3 milk right now. The cow comes, touches the cat. I now have 2 milk. It took a milk away and then brought it back to the barn. Let's see that again. Cow comes up to me, touches the cat, goes down to 1 milk, and the cow brings the milk back to the barn. That is awesome. That is working exactly the way we want it to work. This is awesome. You guys have successfully built a working enemy. The enemy happens to be adorable, but that doesn't make it any less evil in the cat's eyes. Awesome job, you guys. There is a small thing that we need to improve on our cow here for the player. So as the game developer, I know that the cow has stolen some milk because I know to pay attention to that variable going down. I know that I need to pay attention to that number going from 2 down to 1. But as the player, all I see is the cow touched me and then ran away. I don't know that the cow took milk away from me unless I am just eagle-eyed watching that number. So what I want to do is I want to add some feedback for the player. I want to show the player that the cow actually stole the milk and ran off with it by giving a milk sprite to the cow to actually run away with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another milk sprite. So I'm going to right-click on this milk, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm going to rename it from milk 2 to cow milk. All right, this is going to be the milk that follows the cow, that appears on top of the cow when the cow collects it. So I'm going to throw away all the code that is in here. We don't need any of this code. Now, pause. Don't do that yet. Make sure that you threw away the code that is in cow milk, not the code that is in milk. The code that is in cow milk. Make sure cow milk is selected and is empty. Okay. Okay. With cow milk selected, this one down here, let's go ahead and throw an event in there. When I receive start game, I'm going to go ahead and hide this sprite. I don't want this sprite visible when I start the game. It's only going to be visible when the cow is collecting the milk, when he's running back to the barn. Then I'm going to say forever. If the cow has the milk. Well, how am I going to tell whether or not the cow has the milk? Well, the cow should keep track of whether or not he has the milk. So let's go back to the cow sprite. So in the cow sprite, we can actually create a variable called cow has milk. So go to the variables, create a new variable called cow has milk. And this variable is going to be for all sprites, and it's going to be of type Boolean. So this variable is a true or false variable. So we're going to go ahead and hide it, make sure it's not seen on the screen because we don't want the player to know that this variable exists. This is just for us as programmers. So this variable is a Boolean. It controls two values, either true or false. It doesn't store 7 or cheese or Chicken Little. It stores true or false, and that is it. So either the cow has milk or it does not have milk. So when we start the game, cow has milk gets set to false. This is inside the cow sprite. When the cow starts, he doesn't have any milk. The milk is spread out across the farm. Then once he collects the milk, so once we've changed the milks collected by -1 down here, then we set cow has milk to true. Okay? We're not changing this variable. Because it's a Boolean, we are always setting this variable. All right, so we're setting cow has milk to true. Then he's going to point towards the barn and glide back. He's going to run back to the barn. He's collected his milk here. Cow, he has the milk, then he's running back to the barn. Once he gets to the barn, he's going to drop off that milk, and so he no longer has the milk. So we're going to set that back to false. So we're going to set cow has milk back to false after he touches the barn. He's finished his glide back to the barn because he's no longer has the milk. He's dropped it off at the barn. So that's the sequence of does the cow have milk? At the start of the game, he doesn't. Once he touches the cat, he does. He runs back to the barn with the milk. He drops it back off at the barn, and then he no longer has it. So this sprite is actually going to listen for that variable. And when that variable changes, it's going to do some stuff to itself. It's going to show or hide. So when the game starts, it's hidden. And then forever, if that variable is true, so if that variable, cow has milk, is true, then we're going to make sure that it goes to the cow and is visible. We can actually see the sprite. So we're going to have it go to the cow and be visible. And in this instance, this if block actually isn't good enough. We need an if-else state. So if it has the milk, we want to show it. Else, we want to hide it. So let's actually get rid of this if block. So let's clear it out. Let's store all this stuff. We still need it. But let's get rid of this if statement. We need an if-else. So if the cow has the milk, show the milk and make sure it's going to the cow. Else, hide the milk. Don't show the milk. this is maybe the first time you've used an if-else block. So this says, if this condition is true, do this stuff. Else, this condition is false, else do this other thing. That's hiding this cow milk sprite. All right, let's go ahead and do this. Let's hit the green flag. Let's go and collect some milk here. The cow grabs the milk from me, and he's carrying it on his back, and he goes to the barn. And then the milk hides, because cow has milk is now false, so that sprite is hidden. But when he goes and collects another milk, it shows that cow has milk is true, and so that milk sprite is visible. This is so cool. This is feedback for the player. This is how you communicate to the player what is happening in your game without having a long tutorial at the beginning, by visually showing in your game what is going on. Awesome job, you guys. You are making real games now. All right, we're gonna finally start designing these bridges. These bridges are going to go from this main home screen, this main home island, to the different individual scenes or islands in our game. Now, these are big, so we're gonna break it into smaller pieces. This first piece is just going to get them to appear and go on our screen based on certain special conditions. So this first bridge here, let's go ahead and make it appear on our screen, and we're gonna have it just go right here. This is gonna be the first bridge. It's gonna lead up to our top island. So I'm gonna make it visible, and I'm gonna place it right here on my screen, because this is the bridge that goes from this home backdrop to the top backdrop, this backdrop up here. But it's going to appear when we're in the home backdrop. So this bridge, I'm going to rename it from bridge to be home to top. And I'm going to put that angle bracket in there to point in the direction of top. So it goes from home to top. So I know exactly what bridge this is. Now I'm going to code it to appear when we are in the home backdrop and we want to go to the top backdrop. Okay, so first things first, we need to go to events, and then when I receive start game. So when I receive start game, what I want to do is I want to constantly be checking what backdrop I'm currently on and how much milk I've collected. Because I want to say, let's say when I collect 4 bottles of milk on the home backdrop, I want this bridge to appear so that I can go to the next island. So how would I set that up? Maybe in your mind, formulate a plan of how you would do that. So first off, we're going to be constantly checking something. So we need to forever check some stuff. Now we've used this block before. We used it with our cow milk. This is the if-else block. So what we want this to do is we want this to hide pretty much always, unless there are certain conditions met. So in our looks, in this else clause, we're gonna hide. So unless a very specific thing is happening, we want it to hide. So in this else, we're gonna click in that hide, and then in the if, we're gonna click in a show. So we have basically this right here built so far. So if this very special thing happens, show, else, hide this block. Now, what are those conditions? Well, I want this to be if it's on the home backdrop and we've collected 4 milk. So let's just go ahead and say if we're on the home backdrop. So in our operators, we have this equals operator, and we can actually check to see if the backdrop name happens to be home, and we have to spell it perfectly. So if you can't remember how you spelled home, click on your backdrops here, go to the backdrops menu, and look at the spelling for your costume for the backdrop. It has to be identical. Same capitalization, same spacing, everything has to be exactly the same. So I spelled home with a capital H, so in the code for my bridge, when I'm looking for the backdrop name, I'm looking for home with a capital H. So I have this piece, but I also want to make sure that milks collected is more than 4. So in my operators, I'm going to look for this greater than operator. This has the arrow pointing to the right-hand side because this alligator mouth is going to eat the larger number. And I want the milks collected to be the larger number. So that alligator mouth is going to eat milks collected, and 4 is going to be the smaller number. So it's going to look like this. Milks collected is going to be eaten by the alligator, and 4 is going to be on the right-hand side. But how do we join those together? I can't put 2 things in here. This if statement only takes 1 block. I can't put both in there. So I need to actually go into those operators and I need to glue them together. And I want both of these things to be true. I want this and this to be true, where there's a block called an AND block. And this block says that if the thing on the left-hand side and the thing on the right-hand side are true, then this entire statement is true. So if we click both of these in here, then we have a monster block that we can put inside of our if statement. And this huge if statement says, if the backdrop name is home and the milks collected is greater than 4, show, else hide. We put that inside of our forever loop. Now this runs constantly. And only if we're on the home backdrop and the milks is collected is greater than 4 does this bridge show. Else hide the bridge. So when we start our game, we should see that bridge disappear. Let's try it out. Start the game, bridge disappears. Let's go collect some milk. We have 1 milk, 2 milk, 3 milk. Run away from the cow, collect 4 milks. Okay, I need 5 milks because it has to be greater than 4. The bridge is there. We can cross, but we can't actually go to the next island. And the cow took some milk, so the bridge disappears. Now we have to go collect that last milk to get it to reappear. Now we have to add the functionality to where if we cross the bridge, we go to the next island. And we will do that in the next video. All right, now that we have the bridge appearing and disappearing, I want to change the backdrop. When I touch this bridge that leads me from the home island up to the top island, I want to change the backdrop from the home backdrop to the top backdrop. And then I want to move the barn over here, I want to move the cat, all of that. But let's just focus on switching the backdrop and making sure the cat isn't left in the water. So let's go into the cat, because the cat is going to control what happens when it touches the bridge. So let's go ahead and we could absolutely put all of this code in one of these blocks. We already have a when I receive start game block, but let's keep our functions separate. So let's go ahead and throw in a new event, when I receive start game. Let's go ahead and switch the backdrop to the home backdrop. As soon as we start the game, let's make sure the backdrop is reset to the home backdrop so that everything starts the way that we expect it to start. This chunk of code, this function here, is going to be maintaining which backdrop we are switching to and kind of controlling the flow state, the management of our game. You can think of this as our game manager function. And we're going to constantly be checking what we've touched, right? So we need a forever loop. So let's go ahead and click on our forever loop. And we're going to be checking to see what we've touched. So we need an if statement. I'm going to build mine outside and then click it inside of this forever loop. I'm going to build it outside so that if you wanted to uncouple it, you wanted to move it out and duplicate it for your other islands, you could. Okay, so if we are touching a certain sprite, and that sprite is the home to top bridge sprite. So let's go to our sensing menu and grab that sprite. So if touching, not the mouse pointer, but that home to top bridge. This is why we named that bridge such a weird thing, because when we have 30 bridges, 30 different bridge sprites in here, we know exactly which one to grab. The one that goes from the home to the top. What do we want to do? Well, we want to switch the backdrop to that top backdrop, right? Because we want to go from home to top, because we are on the bridge that goes from home to top. So let's do that in our code. So I'm back in the player. We are touching the home to top bridge. So I want to go into looks and I want to switch the backdrop to the top backdrop. Now let's just see if this works. I'm going to click it into that forever loop. I'm going to play my game. I'm going to collect some milk and I'm going to see if it works. Go around the cow. I'm going to touch the bridge and the backdrop switch. Awesome. But you can see that the cat ends up in the ocean and then it kind of glides back onto the land, which is not what we want. Let's go ahead and make it so that the cat ends up somewhere in like the middle of the screen, maybe back at 0, 0. That seems to be a safe spot in all of our islands, but particularly in this top island. So in our code here, in our cat sprite, in our if touching home top, I'm just going to separate this if block out so it's easier to see. We're going to go ahead and put our motion and we're going to add a go to in there. And we can have it go to 0, 0, or we can make it a little bit more believable and make the cat go to like here so that it looks like the cat just left that bridge. It's kind of up to you what you think looks believable or what you want for your game. I want it to kind of look realistic, so I'm going to have it be so that it is the cat goes to this position right here. So I'm actually going to throw away this go-to block. I'm going to move my cat exactly where I want it to go. And my go-to block in the toolbox here actually changes its position based on where the cat currently is or where the sprite currently is. And then I'm going to throw that in there. So now I have this this sprite, cat sprite, exactly where I want it. There's one other thing that we're going to do, and as soon as we go to a new island, we're going to go ahead and spawn in new milk. It's a new island. There's new milk to collect. So we're going to go ahead and throw an event in here, and we're going to broadcast spawn milk as soon as we go to a new island. So we'll put that in there. Let's go ahead and start the game. We have milk to collect. We collect that milk. We should get a bridge to appear. We come up here to the bridge. And we're on a new island. It looks like we just exited that bridge. And here we go. All right. So we have it switching the scene. We have it spawning milk in. And we have the cat moving to a position that makes sense. All right. Another piece of the puzzle solved. Let's move on to the next part in the next video. We now have a bridge that goes from the home island to the top island. But when we get to the top island, there is no way to get back home. So let's go ahead and make a bridge that goes back home from the top island. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this home island bridge and I'm going to duplicate it. So I'm going to right click and duplicate and I'm going to change its name. It doesn't go from home to top, it goes from top to home. So I'm going to change this top, angle bracket, home, because that's where it goes. And we are also going to leave the code the same, except for the backdrop name that it's going to use is not home, it's top. It's going to show when we're on the top island, not the home island, because this goes from top to home, not home to top. And then we just need to change its location, because right now you can see it's here. We need it to go right down here so that we can come back down to the home island. Okay, that might have been a little quick, so let's repeat that real quick. All I did was duplicate the home bridge, change its name so that it says top to home, and then changed when it appears. It appears when we are on the top island. Then I changed its location. Now I need to go into the player sprite and figure out what it's supposed to do when we touch it. So when I touch the top to home, what do we want the backdrop to do? Where do we want the cat to appear? What is going on here? Where do we want the cat to go? Broadcast, spawn milk, all that stuff. So let's go in here. And what I can do is I can just take this same if statement and let's duplicate it. And I'm going to click it down below. And almost everything is going to be the same. We're just going to change a few details about it. So instead of touching the home to top bridge, we're touching the top to home bridge. And then instead of switching the backdrop to the top backdrop, we're switching back to the home backdrop. And then we need to figure out where we want the cat to go. So I want Scratch Cat to go about here because we are coming up from this bridge down at the, actually, we're going from the top island. Top island is up here. So maybe Scratch Cat is about here. That looks good. So I'm going to get rid of this go-to block. Let's grab a new go-to block at Scratch Cat's current position and put it in there, and then click back in broadcast spawn milk. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and leave that on the screen for a second. I went a little bit faster that time because this is all stuff that you've done before. We did it with this home to top. Okay, let's go ahead and hit the green flag and let's test this out. Okay, so right off the bat, I can see that both bridges are hidden, which is good because we haven't met the requirements to show them. Both bridges require 4 milks to be collected. 4 milks to be collected, and right now we have 0 milk. That is perfect. Okay, let's go and collect our milk. One milk, 2 milk, 3 milks, 4 milks, 5 milks. Okay, so the top bridge is shown. The bottom bridge is not showing because it only appears when we're on the top island. Okay, we now have greater than 4 milks and we have this bottom bridge appear. We can go down to it. Cool, it is working perfectly. It is spawning way too many milks, but don't worry, we can clean that up in some pro upgrades, but it is working exactly the way that we want it to work, which I absolutely love. And now you have the outlines to make your game. You can make all of the bridges go to all the different directions following the code that we have laid out here. You have 2 bridges that go from the top island and back home, and the code that helped you do that. And you can follow that same code for all of the bridges to all of the different islands. You just have to keep track of what bridge goes to where and how to get back. And that's where that design is going to help you. That design that we drew out on paper, that's really going to help you here. There's one other small thing that we're going to add in the next video, and then this game is finished. It's just up to you to add in all of the pro features. We are on the final stretch of the basics of this game. Let's go ahead and add one last feature to our game before you go crazy and build out all of the islands. Let's finalize this barn. So let's go into the barn sprite. And right now, when we change the backdrop, the barn doesn't move. In the top island, we have this spot over here for the barn, but it doesn't go over there based on where we're at in our island. In our game, it stays over here. So let's write some simple code to change where the barn is based on which backdrop we are currently on. So let's switch our backdrop to the home backdrop and then go to our barn sprite. Let's say events when I receive start game. So as soon as the game starts to play, where should I go? Well, let's go ahead and forever check which backdrop we're on. And if that backdrop happens to be the home backdrop, go to where it's at right now. So if the backdrop name is home, again spelled the exact same way that I spelled it in the costumes for that backdrop. Then I want to go to the exact position it is right now. And by just sliding in the go to block as where it sits right now, it's going to copy in these values. Perfect. Now let's duplicate this block and click it down below. Still in this forever loop. Let's change this backdrop name from home to top for our other island. And then we're going to throw away this go to block because we don't want it to go to this position. We want it to switch the backdrop to our top backdrop, move the barn to where we want it, and then put in the new go-to position. So now when we're on the top island, the barn will go over here. Then the cow will go to the barn, which is over here where it should be. So now the barn will move to its home based on where the island is at. This is a small thing in your game. You can absolutely leave this barn square in the same exact spot on every island, but that's kind of boring. I like to move it around so that each island feels dynamic. It feels like its own spot, which I really, really enjoy. It gives each island its own little personality. All right, so we have that little piece added to each island. The barn moves, it's starting to feel good. There are some pro upgrades that we're gonna add to this game to make it feel way better, but that is the base game. To finish the base game, you need more than 2 backdrops. At a minimum, you need a backdrop that branches off each path on your home island. So you need a backdrop for the top, a backdrop for the left, a backdrop for the bottom, and a backdrop to the right, and a way to get back to the home island from each one of those. That is a bare minimum for the requirements for this project. Once you have that, then you can move on to the pro upgrades. All right, have fun building out those levels, and I'll see you in the upgrades. For the first pro upgrade, we're going to fix a problem that we have in our game. And it might not be a problem that you see right off the bat because you might be a completionist. You might want to collect every single milk that you see on the screen before you go to the next level. But if you're not, you might see that as you progress to each island, the milk creation gets out of control and you are swimming in milk before you know it. Let's limit the amount of milks that can spawn on the screen so this game is a little bit more playable, because at some point there will actually be too many milks on the screen and your game might lag and crash. And it's actually a very, very easy fix. So I am in the milk sprite here, and we have this block, this coding block here. That's when I receive spawn milk, repeat 7 times, create a clone of myself. So basically we're just creating 7 clones of this milk sprite. But when we have a clone of the milk sprite already on the screen, it creates a clone of that sprite 7 times. So let's say we have 2 clones of the milk sprite on the screen. We're going to create a clone of that sprite 7 times and a clone of that sprite 7 times, meaning we have 14 on the screen. And then we go to the next island and then we get 14 times. It's exponential. So we're going to just limit that. We're going to keep track of how many milks are on the screen and not go over that value. So we're going to use a variable to keep track. So let's make a variable. Let's call it milks on screen for all sprites, and we're going to repeat until a certain thing happens. So we are going to say milks on screen, and let's go ahead and just turn that variable off. We don't want the user to see it. This is a variable just for us. And we're going to keep this create clone of myself, but this repeat 7 times we're going to throw away. We're actually going to go to the control and we're going to do repeat until something happens. And we're going to repeat until milks on screen is equal to, let's say, 10. We're going to limit the number of milks on the screen to 10. Or you could say 15, somewhere around there. You don't want it to get crazy, but you don't want it to be too small so that they can't actually collect enough to advance to the next island. So repeat something until milks on screen equals 10. And we're going to create a clone of myself, but what we're also going to do is we're going to change the milks on screen by 1. So change milks on screen by 1. So every time we create a clone of that milk, we're going to increase that milks on screen variable by 1 until it equals 10, and then we're going to stop making clones and we're going to leave it at 1. Now, what we also want to do is when the player collects a milk, we want to change that milks on screen by a -1 because we have collected a milk off the screen so that when we go to spawn new milk in on a different island, we've taken some away, we can add them back onto the screen. Then in our player, we want to reset our variables back. So set milks collected to 0. We also want to set milks on screen to 0. So we can see that green flag clicked, set milks collected to 0, set milks on screen to 0. So as soon as we start the game, we hit the green flag, we want to reset all of our variables. So we're doing that here. Let's see if this works. All right, so we see we have 3 milks on the screen. We go to the next level and we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We have 10 milks on the screen, not 300 like we did before. We go to the next level and we still just have a max of 10 milks on the screen. This is working exactly the way we want it. We are not swimming in milks like we were before. Now off to the next pro upgrade. I want to add a pro feature to my game. What if I go through, I collect all the milk, but the cow steals them all back, and then I am trapped on this island. I can't escape. So let's say I've collected 7 milks. I can get to the next island, but the cow comes and takes some of these milks back, and then that bridge goes away. Now I only have 3 milks that I can collect. That's not enough to unlock this bridge again. What am I going to do? Well, if I was a sneaky cat, I could go into that barn and respawn them back out onto this level. I could go back through and spread them back out so I could recollect them. Let's add that into the game. It's actually really easy. So I am going to go into this cat sprite, my player sprite here. And what I want to do is when this player sprite touches the barn, I want to broadcast that spawn milk in. You might actually be able to do that without me even showing you how to do it. You are that good at programming now. You could probably figure that out all on your own. But just in case you need a little help, let me show you how to do that. So when I receive start game, I am going to constantly be checking whether or not I've touched the barn. If I've touched the barn, I want to broadcast spawn milk. So let's do that. So forever, if touching something. What am I looking to touch? I'm sensing if I'm touching the barn. Now what is going to happen when I touch the barn? Well, I want that milk to spawn. Well, there's a message for that. It is called spawn milk. I'm going to broadcast that spawn milk message. Now I need to be careful because this sensing block will broadcast this spawn milk for every single frame that this cat touches this barn. So it will spawn that milk multiple times, which can get out of control, especially if you haven't fixed this milk spawning yet, where it can only spawn 10 milk. So if you haven't done this one yet, then this spawn milk on its own will absolutely make your game crazy. So I'm going to put a wait in here, a wait of 5 seconds. So I can only regenerate the milk once every 5 seconds. I'm not a crazy cat. I do actually have to go and collect some milk before I can respawn it back out into the world. So let's test this out. So I can hit the green flag here. I can collect some milk. 1, 2, 3. And then if I go and touch the barn, I spawn some more milk out and I can collect milk again. And there we go. So if I touch this barn, I respawn the milk. Now the cow, because of this message, the cow does come back to the barn, so I gotta be quick. Because the cow's right on me. He's gonna take a milk back. I went into his house. The cow's gonna steal a milk from me, but that's okay because I have more milk out here that I can collect. All right, we have a pro feature added to our game. This is really cool, you guys. This is pretty awesome. I'm really excited about this. Right now, my cow is really dumb. How dumb is he? Well, check this out. If I start the game, I have no milk, and the cow is already gonna come at me and steal my no milk. How does that even make sense? Now I have -1 milk. The cow is still chasing me, and he's gonna take my no milk from me again. Now I have -2 milk. I want my enemy to be a bit smarter. I only want the cow to chase me after I've already stolen his milk. The cops don't come arrest you before you've committed the crime. You've got to commit the crime before the cops come and get you. So I want to make this cow a little bit smarter. So I am in the cow sprite here because we're going to change the programming for the cow to make him a little bit smarter. I only want the cow to chase me if I have collected at least 1 milk. If I have 0 milks, no chasey. If I have more than 0 milks, all right, cow, you can come try to take your milk back. So right here, repeat until touching player, point towards the player and move 1 step. So these are the 2 blocks that actually makes the cow chase me. I only want this to run if milks collected is greater than 0. Think you can already see where this is going. So I can wrap these 2 blocks in a conditional statement. If this condition is true, then chase me. Well, what that would be? Well, let's go ahead and grab that greater than block. And what variable are we checking? Well, we're checking this milks collected variable. And if milks collected is greater than 0, then chase me. So am I touching the player? No. Okay. Then has the cat collected some milk? Yes. Okay, now go chase him. Let's see if that works. So I hit the green flag. I have not collected any milk yet. The cow is not chasing me. This is exactly what we want. But if I come over here and I collect a milk, here he comes. Here comes the cow. There's a fly in here. No, the cow's gonna get me. Okay, the enemy's totally working. And then he steals it and comes back. Okay, so he's gotten one of my milks. He comes and he steals the second milk from me, but he's not going to come and chase me anymore. He's collected all of his milk back. He's happy. He's stashed his milk out. He's a smart enemy now. Awesome job, you guys. This is starting to look like a really fun game.